A very good evening to all of you. I, CA Bhanudhir, a practicing chartered accountant, welcome you all on a very relevant topic, Agile Audit organized by Digital Accounting and Assurance Board of ICAI. The board is currently functioning under the chairmanship of CA Charan Jot Singh Nanda sir, a leading personality who has always been an inspiration for all of us. His devotion and hard work towards his profession is incredible. He is the Central Council member of ICI and chairman of Digital Accounting and Assurance Board Committee on Financial Markets and Investors Protection and SAFA. He is a vice chairman of Board of Internal Audit and Management Accounting ICI. He has also been a chairman and vice chairman of various committees of ICI along with member of Quality Review Board, SEBI, and so on. I hereby extend my warm welcome to this esteemed personality, CA Charan Jot Singh Nanda sir, and would request him to share few key words with us.
Thanks a lot, Manu, for your kind words.
You're most
The
welcome.
most revered faculty of the day, Professor Dr. Kapil Kumar Suri, who's a constant contributor to the cause of the profession. And ladies and gentlemen, I am truly honored to be amongst you, but I'm at the wrong place. I'm at the Delhi airport waiting to go to Kolkata. Lot of noises are coming, so I would just wish this webinar a great success and withdraw. I am very keen to again reiterate that whenever you want any topic, please write to us, and we'll see that best of the faculty comes for it. Thank you so much. Have a nice webinar. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, sir. Thanks a lot. Now, I invite Professor Kapil Suri, our eminent speaker for today. He is a gold medalist in Bachelor of Engineering in Computer Science and Master of Business Administration. He has done MTech from IIT Kanpur and is a certified information systems auditor. He is an international corporate trainer, consultant, business coach, and faculty in the domain of information technology and management from last more than 2 decades within country and overseas. He regularly conducts programs for companies like IBM, Oracle, Microsoft, HP, Google, SAP, Deloitte, PwC, KPMG, and many more. He worked as a consultant with Dubai Police, Emirates, Egypt Telecommunications, and many more. On the top of that, he was also a national cricket player representing Madhya Pradesh cricket team a number of times. Now, I would like to request him to kindly proceed with the session.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Manu. Good evening to all of you. Ms. Manu, kindly confirm my screen is accessible.
Yes, sir, you are visible.
Yeah, even my screen also?
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Great. So once again, good evening to all of you. With one of the most emerging area from the auditor point of view, although audit is not new, and I hope so that many of you, those who are attending this webinar, are quite well versed as well as involved into the audit process from last, some of you even many decades, some of you even from quite good time. And I hope all of you would agree with me that auditor before 2 decades, auditor before a decade, auditor even before 5 years, and especially since the beginning of COVID, and now officially we are using the new version that is post-COVID. Just in a couple of years journey, beginning of COVID, 2020, and post-COVID, we consider just before 1.5 years. So from last 3 years, there are number of drastic changes almost every day basis you observed in each and every business organization with respect to each and every sector. Whether a particular business organization is involved under the manufacturing sector or whether a particular business organization is involved under the service sector. you observed the new vocabulary in last 3 years, which almost each and every business organization, each and every sector, whether a particular organization is involved into automobile manufacturing, whether a particular business organization is involved into the real estate, whether the particular business organization is involved into the FMCG manufacturing, whether a particular business organization is involved into the banking, whether a particular business organization is into the insurance or into the e-commerce. The new vocabulary like hybrid mode. Earlier, just before 3 years, before the beginning of the COVID, most of the business organization be able to classify it. Like some of the business organizations dedicated were working either under the offline mode or working under the online mode. But even at the local level, there is hardly any business organization which has not adopted this particular new methodology or new vocabulary, that is the hybrid, which is a mixture of online and offline. Okay. And now I hope all of you would agree with me that under the current scenario, although 2024 is just started, but now at this moment, as per my involvement, as per my experience, and as per my role into the corporate, 70 to 80% business organizations are now purely working under the online mode, and only 20 to 30% are under the offline mode. Okay. Now, this is the mode. Another challenge, another new thing. Just before couple of years, again, I'll consider before 5 years, not even a decade, most of the business organizations were working under the homogeneous mode. Homogeneous mode means particular business organization is a domain expertise under the automobile manufacturing, like for example, the Maruti Suzuki. Maruti Suzuki till date we consider is the largest car producer in our country. Okay, even today also amongst the 17 players, those which are manufacturing the car, Maruti is still volume-wise market leader. Okay. State Bank of India, the largest banking organization from last many decades, and officially, although the PNB is the oldest bank, but after PNB, post-independence, State Bank of India, but State Bank of India, just before 31st of March 2017 and State Bank of India 1st of April 2017 onwards, and today State Bank of India. Now, along with the State Bank of India, I hope all of you well versed the story of HDFC and the new change, which I hope many of you are providing the support in the form of the taxation as well as the audit. Even with respect to the audit, I hope so. Many of you are involved, directly providing the bank audit support as well as the stock audit support, as well as the internal audit, as well as the concrete audit support, as well as might be some of you are super expertise and providing the IS audit support to the banking organization like SDFC. Even some of you might be having exposure with respect to the special category of audit, that is the forensic audit. Although we use the term audit, but basically it is investigation. Now, what the new change? Not till 30th June 2023 and 1st of July 2023. All of you aware that HDFC officially was the first private sector banking organization in our country. Okay. And since the day one, HDFC entered into the market, HDFC was operating two business vertical. One business vertical dedicated banking, which we know by the name that is HDFC Bank. Another vertical that is HDFC, that is Housing Development Finance Corporation, and the nature of business of HDFC, that is the Housing Development Finance Corporation, which come under the umbrella of NBFC, And the nature of business is similar like the nature of business of India Bull, similar like the nature of business of LIC HFL, similar nature of business of DHFL. Now, on 1st till 30th June, all this, both these verticals were independent running. Okay. And 1st of July onwards, HDFC board, as well as the top level management, as well as the governing body of HDFC, those which is responsible for the productivity, those which concern about the growth of HDFC, decided to integrate. And now in place of two different business unit, now there is a single business unit. Okay. Now along with this, let me just include the another also. The leading financial institute in our country after State Bank of India. Officially, we consider that LIC is the second largest financial institute in our country. And officially, size-wise, LIC is number one in the country as well as one of the leader in the world. But what about the LIC? LIC is not responsible. LIC top level management, LIC governing body is not only responsible to look after only one business under the current scenario. Under the same LIC, now there are three business verticals are running. LIC Insurance, which is the core business or the parent business of LIC. Then number two, LIC HFL. And the nature of business of LIC HFL is similar like Housing Development Finance Corporation as well as DHFL. Then the third vertical, LIC, I hope all of you are aware of having 56% partially shareholding of IDBI. So LIC is partially a banking organization. Now, why I'm talking about all this? Now, all of you having vast experience with the audit, and all of you would agree with me that the role of auditor, irrespective of the nature, irrespective of the size, irrespective of the type of the audit, irrespective of the nature, that is the nature of the business organization, which a moment before I mentioned whether a particular business organization is involved either under manufacturing or into the service organization. Okay. Whether it is a banking, whether it is insurance, whether it is a logistic or whether, and again under the logistic, whether it is operating the warehouse or whether along with the warehouse providing the delivery services like the Gati Express, like the VRL logistic or like the Safe Express or even organization like Post Office of Government of India. And now, what about the size? Now, size of State Bank of India is not equal to the size of HDFC. Size of State Bank of India is not equal to the size of UCO Bank or Union Bank. Size of State Bank of India and size of any leading private sector bank, that is ICICI, HDFC, Kotak Mahindra, is not equal to the size of any cooperative bank. Okay. Even at this moment, the leading cooperative bank is Cosmos, and then comes the PMC, and then there are hundreds of cooperative banks in the country. But whenever we'll think about audit, then default, we think about the role of auditor. Okay. Now, whether it is a concrete audit, whether it is a stock audit, or whether it is an internal audit. Okay. And I hope so many of you are associated with many of the business organization directly and playing the key role as an internal auditor. And some of you, that some maybe, as per my experience, I hope so, that percentage is quite high. Those who are providing the external auditor support, that percentage will consider at this moment in the country. Even around 80% and 20% will consider the auditors would come under the internal auditors at roughly. But in both the case, the term auditor would be the same. Okay. And what about the role of the auditor? Now, auditor, with respect to each and every business organization, always play the key role at the end of the business cycle. Okay. Auditor is not responsible to create the business cycle. Auditor is not responsible to execute the business cycle. Auditor even is not responsible that during the execution, if organization face any type of a technical glitch with respect to the business cycle, then auditor is not responsible to resolve those issues, because for all those activities to create the business cycle, their subject matter experts are available. To run the business cycle, again, there are different stakeholders would be involved. Okay. Some are directly, some are indirectly. Okay. Now, to resolve the technical glitches during the execution, again, their subject matter experts are available. But what about the role of this auditor? An auditor would always play the key role, and based on the auditor report, that is the output of the audit, each and every top level management, each and every business organization gain the confidence, okay, with respect to the effective decision making, whether they go with the existing business cycle or they should perform some changes. Okay. Or even if suppose organization is looking to expand the size of the business, then again this audit report would play the key role. Okay. Until date, all of you having vast experience to perform n number of different type of audit, and those audit we consider as a traditional audits. Okay. And what about under the traditional audit? I hope all of you would agree. At the beginning of each and every audit, according to the nature of the business organization, the type of services which a particular business organization want to avail through the auditor. Okay. So based on the audit requirement, we always define the objective. Okay. So more or less audit at the beginning means before going to start any audit process, because audit is a one type of a process, it is a one type of operation. We always consider that audit is a one type of a project. I hope all of you would agree with me that under the one organization, under the one firm, okay, that may be Deloitte, that may be PwC, that may be KPMG, that may be E&Y, that may be Grant Thornton. Every day, there are number of audit projects are going on. Okay, some audit projects are under the internal audit team, some audit projects under the statutory audit. Okay, so each and every new assignment, each and every new audit assignment through the client would be considered as one type of a project. Okay. And now whenever we use the term project, especially with respect to the traditional audit, because until unless all these fundamentals won't be clear, you fail to understand why we concern about this agile audit. So somewhere traditional audit having the limitation, that's why means this is same, just like I hope all of you understood the cricket. Okay. Now from the layman point of view, in test cricket also, there are 11 players are involved. In T20 also, 11 players are involved, as well as in ODI also, 11 players are involved. Okay. And even in test cricket also, batsmen always played via bat. Okay. In T20 and ODI also, batsmen. And now even in place of the batsman, now we are using the new vocabulary in place of the gender bias, that is a batter. So batter using the bat, bowler always using the ball, but the technique which a particular player follow while playing the test cricket and the technique which a particular player following while playing the ODI of 50 overs and technique which a particular player follow while playing the T20 would be totally different. I hope all of you would agree. Similarly, from the audit point of view also. Now, at the beginning of each and every audit project, according to the audit objective, according to the need or the requirement defined by the client, what we want to achieve through the audit, and at the end of the audit, through the audit report, what the client is expecting, all this is scope we defined at the beginning, and we prepare one document, that is the audit charter, and parallel to audit charter, we prepare the one more document, that is the SLA, that is the service level agreement, that along with the some basic services, what the additional services would be provided or offered by the service provider, that is auditor. Okay. But what about whenever we use the term project? Then I hope all of you would agree with me that project always having the predefined or preset duration, means project always start on a particular time and project always over on a particular time. And we always preset what we want to achieve through the project. Okay. And project is a predefined set of activities. Okay. So under the traditional audit, okay, we always deal with the static environment of the business organization. Static or environment means what? That is the rigid, that is the fix. Means at the end of the financial year, okay, for time being, we'll consider 1st April to 31st of March, or even the half financial year, okay, at the end of the 30th September, okay, or at the end of the each and every quarter. So at the end of the financial year, that is the fiscal, or at the end of the half financial year, or at the end of the quarter, okay, whenever we'll do the audit. So whatever organization already done, okay, whatever organization already generated, okay, what we have to do? We have to do only the three things. I hope all of you would agree with me with respect to each and every audit. Like number one, I hope my screen is accessible. Review. We always review. Okay, whatever organization already achieved, whatever organization already done, although the auditor was not involved into the process. Even auditor was not responsible to create the business process. Then after the review, auditor responsible to evaluate. Okay. Then examine. Now the question is what to review, what to evaluate, and what to examine. Because auditor, like I mentioned a moment before, is not responsible to create the business cycle. So how auditor able to educate himself or herself about the business? Because until unless auditor is not educated about the business, don't have any knowledge about the business, don't know anything what is inside the business, don't know what organization want to achieve, how the business organization was running their business cycle, then I hope so no auditor can able to perform his or her task or fail to evaluate that whether the organizations were doing or perform their task under the healthy environment or unhealthy environment. Okay. So review, evaluate, and examine. So I hope all of you able to see my screen. Number one, with respect to each and every audit. Now, each and every client always expect, especially under the current scenario, that auditor must evaluate the productivity of the business organization. Okay. Why organizations concern about, and why organization even concern about that who should perform the audit? Why organizations giving the weightage to a particular audit firm also? I hope all of you would agree with this version. Even now the startups also become highly intelligent, that they are choosy or selective, that through whom they should perform the audit, that at the end of the audit report, they will get more and more better investment, because the type of the firm or the type of the auditor, those who going to evaluate. Now, that doesn't mean that auditors, those which are working king. But here somewhere, organization psychologically giving the weightage to the brand value. Okay, so productivity, and mathematically, I hope all of you know that there is a formula to compute the productivity. Productivity is equal to output by input. Okay, and each and every business organization, they strictly follow the thumb rule that less input and more output. Okay, means if suppose initially their input would be 100%, then they want to generate minimum output would be 200% through the first business cycle. Okay, and now every organization concerned about the growth, every organization concerned about high value of return. Okay, so if organization concerned about the growth, then when they start the second business cycle, now input is still would remain the 100%, but now the organizations are expecting output would be the in place of 200, 400%. Okay, so along with the productivity, organization concern about the efficiency also. That is the speed. Okay, and now I hope all of you would agree, productivity when we multiply with 100, okay, then this value we express into the percentage which is known as efficiency. Okay, now along with this, there is a third parameter for which auditor is responsible. That is effectiveness. Okay, now organizations concern about the growth, organization concern about high value of return. Okay, but parallel organizations also expect that during the audit, auditor should evaluate, should examine that their each and every business process would be free of bugs, should be free of defects, should be free of error. Okay, not only organization concern about the high value return, because many times what happen through the vehicle which we are driving, okay, through that vehicle we able to reach to the destination. Okay, but that vehicle having some fuel efficiency issue. Okay, that vehicle having some internal turbulence, and due to that the effectiveness of the vehicle is suffer, and due to this we unable to utilize that vehicle optimum. Although we able to reach to the destination, we able to achieve the task. Similarly, with respect to many of the business organization, especially under the current scenario, they not only concern about the productivity or efficiency, but they concern about the effectiveness also. And along with the effectiveness, now the fourth parameter which they are expecting, and especially under the current scenario, they are giving the maximum weightage to this, that is security. Okay, means each and every organization with every new business cycle, not only they want to enhance or improve their productivity, not only they want to enhance or improve their efficiency. Okay, especially under the current scenario and the change which I hope many of you observe, and I hope so some of you are actively involved into that process. Okay, now let me use the another statement. Under the current scenario, organization with every new business cycle, they also concern about to expand their size. Now, whenever the organization expand their size, now, no doubt, each and every business organization want to generate more and more revenue sources, because they want to increase volume of, they want to increase the volume of their business transaction, they want to increase volume of their customer traffic, they want to increase volume of revenue generation, they want to increase volume of profit. Okay, now what about here? Now from the auditor point of view, business owner, business organization, their concern area is whenever they expand the size of the business, so they concern about to create more and more revenue sources. But from the auditor point of view, the manner in which organization expand the size of the business organization in the similar manner, in the similar proportion, RISK with respect to the business would increase. I hope all of you would agree with me. That is the risk. And chartered accountant. And now chartered accountant playing the role of auditor. Then I hope all of you would agree with me that chartered accountant is the only person in the world, there are a number of people having very good knowledge about the finance, even some of them having very good understanding about the taxation. Okay. But chartered accountant is the only person whom we consider that he or she would be a SME, that is a subject matter expert, domain expert into a one particular skill, and nobody can able to challenge him, which is known as RA. RA stand for, that is the risk assessment. Okay. And whenever we'll think about the security, then default will think about the risk assessment. Okay. And now this, under the risk assessment, this is a combination of two terms. One is risk, another is assessment. Assessment, which we also known as in simple terms, analysis. Okay. And during the risk assessment, broadly, each and every auditor perform three activity. Number one, RI, that is the risk identification. Number two, risk analysis. And number third, that is the risk respond. Okay. And now whenever we'll think about the risk identification, then default, each and every auditor with respect to each and every business organization, at the beginning, always concerned about that which type of assets are associated with respect to the business organization. And then out of n number of assets, auditor classified all these assets into the different category. Like some assets would come under the category of low value. Some assets would come under the category of average value. Some assets would come under the category of high value. Now the question is, what is this asset? And especially under the current scenario, all this auditors were doing through the traditional audit. So where this agile is playing the key role. Now, just have a look here. I hope all of you would agree with me that whenever we'll think about the audit, then whenever the auditor, and especially whenever we'll think about this agile audit, which is a one type of internal audit, just like internal audit is there, just like the bank audit, just like the statutory audit, just like the IS audit, all these audits would come under the category of internal audits. But what about the specialty of this agile? Now, one word meaning of this term, that is agile, means FLEXIBLE. I hope all of you would agree. That is flexible. Okay. Now, what I mentioned at the beginning, till date, whatever the audits you people perform, you always perform the audit with respect to any business organization which having the fixed environment. Okay. Fixed environment means you educate yourself about the business organization at the beginning. You set the target, what you want to achieve through the audit, because through the audit, you strictly follow the one is static environment. Okay. But now whenever we use this term agile, okay. So along with the agile means flexible. And along with the agile, we always use one more term, PIVOT. Although many of you, not many of you, almost all of you heard this term whenever you use Excel, that is pivot, because all of you familiar with pivot table, and now we are extensively using the Power BI. Then under the Power BI, now we are using the Power Pivot. So there also you are using the term pivot. But how many of you understood the meaning of term pivot? Understood the meaning of term pivot. Okay. Now pivot means, pivot is also flexible. But pivot, whenever we use the term pivot, that means something which is generated after CHANG, that is change. Okay, means there are two versions of the business, previous version and the new version. And under the current scenario, I hope all of you would agree with me, especially in last 3 years, maximum last 2 year, and again now if I'll consider last 1.5 year. Now in last 1.5 year, what is the specialty with respect to the corporate, with respect to the business sector, and especially after 76 years of post-independence, because now we completed 76 years. But as per my experience, as per my exposure, and as per my study and research, I never observed, I never came across that the manner in which last 1.5 year and again last less than 1 year, the manner in which M, A, and JV are happening in the country, and especially with respect to the corporate world. The frequency of merger, frequency of acquisition, and the frequency of joint ventures. I hope all of you would agree. And there are many chartered accountants I know worldwide as well as into the country. Those who are subject matter expert, those who are domain expert only in merger, acquisition, and the joint ventures. And I hope some of you also are playing the key role with respect to many of the key merger, acquisition, and the joint ventures. So whether it is a Tata, okay, Tata, which is officially the first corporate house in our country, which started journey only with one business, that is the Tata Steel, 155 years before, under the leadership of Jamshedji. But now, the person who is onto the driver's seat, I hope all of you are aware of that first time in the history of Tata Group, the person who is appointed the driver of the entire business organization, who is responsible for the total productivity, who is responsible for the total TQM, that is the total quality management, that is N. Chandrasekharan. He basically the hired employee. Okay. Now, with respect to the entire Tata Group, the maximum expansion was performed under the leadership of Ratan Tata and number 2, JRD. But now, the maximum merger acquisition, those which are happening with respect to the Tata Group, please kindly pay attention, then you understood where this agile audit would going to play the key role. In last less than 1 year, I hope all of you are aware, under the leadership of N. Chandrasekharan, Tata acquired Air India worth 18,000 crore. Now, before that, please kindly pay attention from the auditor point of view, because all this you have to think from the auditor point of view, and especially from the agile audit. If you really want to become a subject matter expert under the agile audit, then according to me, your thinking pattern should be totally different than the traditional auditor. One should be calm, quiet, and critical and the creative thinker, because the complexity of the business is very high. Now just have a look. Tata perform acquisition, not the merger, not the joint venture of Air India. And I hope all of you would agree with me that merger is a different type of a process, acquisition is a different type of a process, and joint venture is a different type of a process. And now, whenever any business organization think about merger, acquisition, and joint venture, then they always concern about to expand the size of the business. And why organization want to expand the size of the business? Because organizations are no more looking for the productivity. No organization focuses high productivity. Organization no more looking for the growth. Organization looking for high growth. Organization no more looking for efficiency, looking for high efficiency. Organization no more looking for effectiveness, but high and effective effectiveness. Okay. And now what about here? Tata acquired the Air India, but before that, Tata already operating the 2 airlines, and those 2 airlines were under the joint venture. Okay. Air Vistara with Singapore and Air Asia India with Malaysian Airlines. And now, after the acquisition of Tata, Air India, Tata decided to merge all this. So, first process, acquisition. And before that, Tata already performed the joint venture with respect to two business organization. Okay. And now Tata decided to integrate all this. That is the merging. Okay. Now, along with this, please kindly pay attention. Along with this, just last week, I hope all of you are aware, there is one vertical of Tata under the umbrella of Tata Sons. Tata Group is known as Tata Sons. There is one vertical that is the Tata Consumer. Okay. And under the Tata Consumer, where Tata Beverages would also come, where Tata operating the Starbucks in India, which is a joint venture with Starbucks and Tata. Okay. And that is one of the sub-vertical under the Tata Consumer. And now, under the Tata Consumer, now Tata, last week, performed a huge investment, acquire Capital Foods, okay, and Organic, okay, and the worth is 5,100 plus 1,900, that is the 7,000. And now, parallel to this, in less than 1 year, Tata acquired the Big Basket, okay, and Tata already having the online vertical, that is the Tata Click. Okay, now what about here? How all this would play the key role with respect to the auditor and especially for the internal auditor. Now, internal auditors, their responsibility with respect to external auditor would be much, much more. And internal auditors, whenever the organization perform any type of a CHANG, okay, and which having a impact or the huge impact over the productivity or the total productivity of the business organization. So, internal auditors would be the key person and they would be considered as a type of a risk owner. They would be considered as a type of a process owner and they would be considered as a type of a quality assurance because they would be responsible to check the quality of the business before and after, means before change and after change. Okay, now what about this auditor? How this auditor, although auditor is not, it is not necessary that auditor is involved directly in taking the decision of merger, acquisition. Even auditor is not responsible with respect to any of the business unit. Now, before merging also within the business organization, there is a purchase department. Okay. After merging also, purchase department would exist. But before merging, purchase department providing the support or services only with respect to one business. Okay. Like for example, if you'll consider the Tata Steel. Okay. Now Tata Steel, before acquisition of Bhushan Steel, before acquisition of Bharat Ispat. Okay. So Tata Steel, purchase department is only responsible to perform the selection of the vendor, to purchase the material only with respect to. But what about here? When Tata acquire the Bhushan Steel, when Tata acquire the Bharat Ispat, so within the Bhushan Steel also, there was a purchase department. Within the Bharat Ispat also, there was a purchase department. Okay. Similarly, if we'll consider Air India, now whatever the different process, okay, within the Air India, all those different standard business process already exist, already performed by Air Vistara as well as Air Asia and India. Okay. Now, before acquisition, internal auditors only responsible to review the purchase operation, just to review the procurement operation, just to review the sales operation, just to review the finance operation. All these are the different type of the process. Those which are before merging, before acquisition, and before joint venture. Okay. Now, under the current scenario, have a look here. I hope all of you are able to see. Whenever we'll think about the business organization, then under the current scenario, there is hardly any business organization which is responsible to operate only a one type of a business under one umbrella, whether it is RIL, that is Reliance Industry Limited. Okay. When Dhirubhai Ambani started, then at that time, the parent business was Polymer. But when Mukesh Ambani come onto the driver's seat, then still the parent business of Reliance is Petro. But now the total productivity, with respect to the total productivity of Reliance, Jio is playing the key role. Okay. Now, Jio initially was the telecom, but along with the telecom, Jio fiber optics, Jio device, and now Jio, Jio Mart, and the nature of the business is totally different. And now, with respect to each and every business, how auditor educate himself, even the internal auditor always educate himself or herself with respect to each and every business via BM. That is the business model. Okay. And I hope all of you would agree with me. Under the current scenario, whenever the organization concern about high productivity, organization concern about high growth, concern about high efficiency, so they are reviewing. I hope so all of you would agree with me. They are reviewing their business model on daily basis. Like today morning, whenever the organization started their operation, so at that time they set some target for the day. Okay. And now at the end of the day, they like to evaluate, they like to examine through internal auditors that whatever the target they defined, whatever the goal they set, whether they achieve or not. Now, if they fail to, so it means within their business model, there were some bugs, there were some defects, there was some error, okay, which we known as, means there was some weakness, which we known as the vulnerability from the auditor point of view. Vulnerability means the weakness within the system. Okay. So before going to start the next day, organizations like to overcome this. Okay. So they like to perform changes. Okay. So they like to revise or like to change their business model. Now, whenever we'll think about the merging, so before merging and after merging, like HDFC till 30th June and HDFC 1st of July. Now I am saying the business model of HDFC Bank 1st of July 2023 onwards is totally changed. I hope all of you would agree with me. Okay. And now this would become the challenge even for the internal auditors, because under the current scenario, there is hardly any business organization which is working under the static environment. You name it, any business organization, whether it belongs to the service sector, whether it belongs to the manufacturing sector, each and every business organization is working under the DYNAMIC, that is the dynamic business environment. And each and every business organization daily basis review their business model. Okay. And daily, even before merging, after joint venture, even without merging, without joint venture, without acquisition also, even if suppose internally also, they like to connect their two business units. Okay. Like, for example, HDFC, Housing Development Finance Corporation belongs to HDFC. HDFC Bank also belongs to HDFC. So before merging, Housing Development Finance Corporation having its own independent business model, HDFC Bank having its own business model. Now after integration, after merging, there is a totally a new business model. And what this business, and I hope all of you would agree with me, especially from the auditor point of view, business model is the most valuable asset with respect to any business organization. And through business model only, auditor can able to educate himself, and the type of the business model or the strength of the business model or the productivity of the business model define the success rate of any business organization. Means for time being, let me use one statement or version. I hope all of you would agree. From the layman point of view, State Bank of India is a bank, HDFC is a bank, Union Bank is a bank, ICICI is a bank. But I'm saying the type of the business model followed by State Bank of India is not equal to the type of the business model followed by any other bank. And productivity or success is dependent on to the type of the business model. Okay. Now, just before couple of years, organizations were concerned about only the size, even the governing bodies also. But now, both the governing bodies and the management, their focus area is not only to increase the size of the business. They concern about along with the size, that is the productivity. But it is not necessary that the organization which is size-wise is the largest, that organization also having the maximum productivity. For example, State Bank of India, according to RBI, RBI is a regulator as well as a governing body. So size-wise, State Bank of India is the largest bank. But productivity-wise, market capital point of view, HDFC is number one. Just before a couple of months after Reliance Industry Limited, number two was HDFC. Currently, number two is TCS. Okay. And number third is HDFC. And now what this business model contain? Within the business model, there are a number of business processes. So according to the nature, according to the type, according to the size of the business organization, okay, especially the nature or type of the business, all these business processes, if organization is manufacturing like automobile, then business process like purchase, procurement, production, okay, warehouse, finance. Now, all these business processes are independent, and output of one business process is input for another business process. And each and every internal auditor is responsible to coordinate with each and every top level user with respect to each and every business process. Like, for example, internal auditor has to coordinate, has to regular basis communicate with the purchase manager, has to regular basis coordinate or communicate with the procurement manager, regular basis coordinate or communicate with the CFO. Okay. And through purchase manager, gain the knowledge, gain the understanding that on what basis purchase manager perform the selection criteria of any vendor. Okay. On what basis purchase manager place a particular order to a particular vendor? Why not place a particular order to another vendor? Because selection of the vendor, placing a order, okay, receiving the inventory, releasing the payment, okay, receiving the inventory, all this would be the different type of the processes. And internal auditor always concerned about to review all this business processes. Okay. I hope all of you and many of you, I hope so actively. But under the current scenario, when organization daily basis performing changes, tremendous changes, means morning to evening, they are performing n number of drastic on sudden changes to enhance or improve the productivity of the business. So whenever the changes perform into the business model, so can we say that all these changes would be performed via business process, and it would become a challenge for the auditor? Like, for example, at this moment, auditor is doing review or evaluation of a particular business process, but at the same time, same moment, governing body, board of directors, as well as people at the management, CEO, CFO, that took the decision to perform changes into the business process. And now auditor, internal auditor would be responsible that whatever the changes now decided by the board of directors, decided by the top level management, would be followed by the middle level management as well as executed by the low level management. They must to review. Okay, so it become a challenging task. So can we say that if the business environment is flexible, if the business environment is dynamic, which is known as the agile business environment, so such type of audit also known as the agile audit. So under the current scenario, more or less, according to the dynamics of the business, each and every auditor is doing is the agile audit. And default, now can we say that each and every auditor who is responsible or doing the agile audit, he or she would be considered as agile auditor? So the behavior or the thinking pattern of the traditional auditor or the behavior of the thinking pattern of agile auditor would be totally different. Just have a look now. Now, whenever the business process execute, then each and every business process generate DATA. And under the current scenario, I hope all of you would agree with me. Each and every organization would consider that data is the lifeline and technology is the driver. And suddenly, in last couple of years, maximum in last 3 years, and now every passing day, with respect to each and every business, dependency over TCHNOLOGY, that is the technology, would be more and more. And now, I hope all of you would agree with me. Whenever the organization think about to implement any technology, so organization like, for example, organization like State Bank of India, even if suppose I'll consider RBI, okay, and with respect to RBI, if suppose, let me refer Shakti Kanta Das, the governor. Now, if RBI governor as well as chairman of State Bank of India, Dinesh Khara, they both are encouraging each and every personal banking customer as well as the corporate banking customer to perform banking operation, not in a standard manner, not in a manual fashion, not in a manner in which they were using the banking earlier, but they should adopt the digital. Okay, now under the digital also, now whenever and wherever we use the term digital, then a moment before I mentioned, organization able to evaluate their productivity via data, because data is the lifeline. But data would be captured, data would be stored, data would be processed, data would be analyzed. Okay, and through data, organization generate the relevant information, and through relevant information, organization generate the effective knowledge, and through effective knowledge, the top level management and the governing body would gain the confidence to perform the effective decision making. So can we say that now when organizations are more and more encouraging, and now under the current scenario, when organization, their dependency over the technology would be maximum. Okay, and now this data, which is the lifeline, okay, and I hope all of you would agree with me, now there is a new challenge. Just have a look. We are not into the learning. This is just the ignition session. Maybe sometime in future, we'll interact into the detailed session of Agile Audit workshop. So at that time, I'll give you the practical exposure that how to perform at each and every level. This is just the ignition, just the overview that what is inside this. Now, till date, many of the professionals, they fail to understood the data. Okay, and now in place of the data, we are using the new vocabulary, that is the big data. And with respect to the big data, now we are using the three type of the data. We are using the structured data, we are using the semi-structured data, and we are using the unstructured data. And now from where all this data would would coming whenever the business process execute. And auditor always deal with the business process. And what I mentioned a moment before, whenever the organization think about to perform the change into the business, then they always perform changes into their business process. And whenever the organization think about the changes into the business process, then they always use one technique. They always use one technique. Just give me a moment. Because there are two things. One is technology, another is technique. And I hope all of you would agree with me that each and every technology governed by at least one technique, maybe the multiple techniques also. Okay. Technique means whenever the organization think about to perform changes into their business process, they always use one technique which is known as BPR. That is the business process re-engineering. And re-engineering, all of you know. What do you mean by the re-engineering? That is the redesigning, restructuring. And why any organization? Re-engineering, that doesn't mean to create something from scratch. Something is already there. Something is already there. Like, for example, this is the previous version of a one particular product, and this is the new version. So can we say that in between the previous version and the new version, organization perform the BPR? And BPR always apply with respect to the business process to enhance or improve the productivity of the business. And this again become a challenge for any internal auditor, and especially under the Agile audit, because organizations are continuously performing the changes. So this would become the challenge for internal auditor also, although internal auditor is there within the organization. But whenever the organization, especially at the governance level, at the board of director level, as well as the top level management, because their focus area is anyhow to shoot up or to increase the brand value of the business organization, to increase the volume of the business. So they always concern about only the business process. Okay. They least concern about the other things from the auditor point of view. And now this become the challenge for the auditor. And now, like, if auditor fail to understood what is the difference between the data and the big data, what is the difference between structured data, semi-structured and unstructured, then auditor fail to understood like under the current scenario, 90 to 95% business organizations are enabled with ERP. Okay. Now ERP is a technique and SAP is a product. Okay. Now to implement the ERP, organization need required the database server. Organization need required the data warehousing, because with respect to each and every business organization, whenever we'll think about the analysis, even from the auditor point of view, because during the audit, whenever the auditor perform the risk analysis, so ultimately during the risk analysis, auditor is doing the data analysis. And whenever we perform the data analysis, then always we use two type of data. One is the current data, another is historical data. Current data always is stored into the database server. Historical data, which is into large volume, we always keep into the data warehousing. So can we say that database server, which is the backbone of each and every business organization, because data is the most valuable asset. And when data is converted into the database, and when database is converted into data warehouse, this going to become the more valuable asset. And database server and data warehouse are technology. And now along with this, organization using the technique data mining. Now along with the data warehousing, if we'll consider organization like Tata, organization like Reliance, okay, now with respect to their different business verticals, they are generating, because there are different type of the business process, they are generating the huge volume of the data. And each and every organization concerned about the security. Okay. So to mitigate the risk, under the current scenario, each and every organization, they are dependent onto the data center. Okay. Now, somewhere these data centers are in-house, but mostly the data centers are third-party service provider. Okay. And this third-party service provider data centers, we commonly know by a common vocabulary, that is a cloud computing. Okay. Now, whether it is IaaS, whether it is PaaS, whether it is SaaS. Now, here there is another challenge from the auditor point of view. Organization concern about automation with respect to the business process. And now organization moving from partial automation to the full automation. And now with respect to the full automation, organization now in place of only thinking about the ERP, now along with the ERP, organization are many of the business organization already implemented. I am involved directly, but those of not till date, they are planning to enable with the cloud infrastructure. They are planning to enable with AI. They are planning to enable with ML, that is artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning. And under the deep learning, I hope all of you heard about NLP, that is the natural language processing, as well as speech recognition. And now this become a new question from the internal auditor point of view, especially under the agile environment. Now there are multiple technologies are there, and many of the business organization, they adopted many of the technologies without testing. So now this become a puzzle, new puzzle from the internal auditor point of view, because agile audit is a one type of internal audit, that each and every technology is not advisable for each and every business organization, because it is not necessary that through each and every technology, organization would able to enhance, not only able to enhance or improve their productivity, but somewhere they able to increase their level of vulnerability. And if level of vulnerability would increase, then in the same proportion, the percentage of threat would increase. And when percentage of vulnerability and threat would increase, then default the percentage of risk would increase. And risk, which is default, APROBABILITY or LIKELIHOOD, that is at the beginning of each and every process, nobody is aware of what would be the level of the risk, because risk is always uncertain, because it is probability. And mathematically, there is a formula to compute the risk, that is R is equal to A into V, that is asset. And like I mentioned, type of asset, like business model is a one type of asset. Business process is another type of a asset. Okay, then again, there is a classification of the business processes. Some business processes would come under the category of standard business process. Some business processes would come under the category of critical business processes. And few business processes would come under the category of highly critical business processes, which we also known as highly sensitive. So, vulnerability associated with respect to the standard business process, vulnerability associated with respect to the critical business process, and vulnerability associated with respect to the highly critical or highly sensitive would vary. And now due to the variation of, I hope all of you would agree, especially from the auditor point of view, if the level of vulnerability would vary according to the type of asset, then the level of threat would also vary. And then with respect to vulnerability and threat, which having impact over the risk, auditor always having only one solution, that is CONTROL, that is the control. Okay. And although there are three type of control organizations are dealing based on their physical location. Organizations are dealing with environmental control, they are dealing with external control, they are dealing with internal control. But internal auditors mostly deal with internal control, which broadly comes under the three category. That is PDC, preventive, detective, corrective. But along with this, internal auditors also deal with one more additional control, that is the administrative control, because there are some controls would come under the category of administrative. Now here, whenever we'll think about the control, then default from the auditor point of view, default, we concern about the control strength. Okay. And control strength would always dependent on to POLICY, that is the policy. Because whenever we'll perform the control assessment, then strength of the control would always evaluated, or strength of the control dependent on to the type of the policy. That's why under the agile environment, the fundamental vulnerability, which I observed in many of the business organization, many of the business owner, many of the governing body, their focus area is to increase the volume of the business. Their focus area is to enhance or improve the productivity of the business. But they least pay attention. Like, for example, whenever they acquire any business organization, or whenever they merge their business with another business, or whenever they perform the joint venture. So from the auditor point of view, and especially internal auditor point of view, can we say that organization basically acquire some level of risk also? Okay. Although before merging, before acquisition, before joint venture also, we perform pre and post risk assessment. But some risk, those which already inbuilt, which is known as the inherent risk, although as per the level of intelligence awareness, organization to overcome, implement some control, but some risk which is under the hidden, having the later on impact. So this would become the challenge for the auditor point of view. And now, when organization incorporated a number of different type of technologies like cloud computing. Okay, now what about into the cloud computing? I hope all of you would agree that out of 100% business organizations, because even at a small level also, in each and every major city, even many of you also, I hope so, their 100% practice or their 100% transaction, you people are performing the cloud-based. Okay. And now whenever we'll think about the cloud-based infrastructure, then default will think about the third-party support, whether it is AWS, whether it is Azure, so whether it is GCP, that is the Google cloud provider, whether it is IBM Cloud, Oracle Cloud, and all this would be the third-party service provider. And all of you would agree, like a moment before I mentioned, data is the most valuable asset. Okay. And now this data which is generated after the execution of the business process within the business organization or amongst the stakeholder of the business organization, this data is a valuable asset. Okay. Now that cloud service provider is only providing support with respect to infrastructure. That infrastructure may be the data storage. Okay. That infrastructure may be with respect to the web server. That infrastructure may be with respect to the application server. That infrastructure may be with respect to the networking, and that networking may be intra-networking, extra networking, as well as inter-networking. So there are number of technologies are involved. Okay. And now this again become a challenge for the internal auditor. The manner in which organizations, especially at the governance level or at the management level, are taking the decision or performing the implementation. So to co-op and to perform such level of the risk assessment, such level of the vulnerability test, such level of the control assessment, which I already mentioned here, VT means vulnerability test. TM stands for threat modeling, means whenever the incident occurred, because many times incident happened like the cyber attack. Okay. And then organization think about to implement the control which come under the corrective control. Okay. But from each and every auditor point of view, it is always advisable. I hope all of you would agree. Preventive control, always we consider the best control with respect to the corrective control, and input cost which is involved in implementing the preventive control would be much lesser than the corrective control. Okay. And usually internal auditor would be responsible to design or develop the framework with respect to the preventive control. But now, under this dynamic environment, this would become the challenge even for the internal auditor, especially agile auditor, then control assessment, and then compliance assessment also. And now, there is one more thing. Now, under the current scenario, the manner in which at the governance level, like whether it is RBI, whether it is IRDA, whether it is CCI, whether it is even TRIA, okay, because all this regulator would come left hand side, and then another like NEFRA, CAG, okay, now they all are generating the red flag with respect to each and every audit report, because according to them, according to NEFRA, in last couple of months, maximum last 1 month, almost daily basis, NEFRA is generating the red flag with respect to each and every audit report, because according to the NEFRA, somewhere auditor unable to educate, unable to co-op, or unable to connect himself or herself with respect to the real business cycle and the manner in which they're supposed to perform the audit. Because basically NEFRA was trying to say the manner in which organization performing the changes into their business, if auditor unable to go up, like what I mentioned at the beginning, just if we'll consider the case of Team India, which has started playing cricket since 1932 under the captainship of Captain C.K. Naidu. Captain C.K. Naidu was the first captain, and now Rohit Sharma is the latest. Now, Captain C.K. Naidu lead the team which is only responsible to play only one type of a cricket. But now Rohit Sharma is leading the team which is responsible not only with respect to the Team India, but just before some time, even he was the most successful captain of the IPL. So the versatile environment. So now here under the agile environment, this would become the challenge that on regular basis, means there is a one thumb rule according to me under the agile audit. If anybody means anybody honestly or strictly follow, then nobody means nobody can able to challenge his or her productivity, and nobody means nobody can able to raise any type of a red flag. More and more CPL, more and more CPI, continuous process of learning, continuous process of improvement. And now the question is, what would be the source of learning? So, according to me, internal auditors, especially under the agile audit, has to establish healthy communication with the governing body, especially the board of directors. And now, with respect to the regulator like RBI, with respect to the regulator like IRDA, with respect to the regulator like TRIA, with respect to even regulator like CCI, because India is a hub of retail sector. So on daily basis, like when RBI perform any type of amendment, okay, with respect to policy, with respect to standards, with respect to the guidelines, with respect to the procedure, okay, because all these guidelines, all this policy, all these standards, all these procedures, those which are basically designed and developed at the regulator level, which we known as the control framework, okay, or policy framework would, and now I hope all of you would agree with me, not even at the management level, not at the business organization level. Organizations are working under the dynamic environment. But now the first time, especially in last couple of years, all the regulators also are working under the dynamic environment. And on regular basis, regulators are as per the business need, as per the changes. Like for example, if we'll consider the case of the banking, and with respect to the banking, for time being, just to understood the concept, if we'll consider the case of the payment, then I hope all of you would agree with me. We used to, or any customer used to perform either with respect to the personal or corporate banking, either with respect to the saving account or the current account, the payment transaction earlier also and today also. But the manner in which customer used to perform earlier, like down the line to a particular bank, visit to a particular branch, visit to the cash counter, okay, either withdrawal or deposit. Now, in place of this, although this facility is still there, and still, according to any senior most banker or any senior most auditor, I hope many of you also would agree this version. This is the safest mode of the highly sensitive business process, that is the financial or the monetary transaction. But along with this, IMPS, RTGS, NEFT, and now the weightage of UPI is maximum. UPI framework was designed, developed in 2016. Okay. And with respect to the UPI, Government of India developed the new controller or the new governing body which is responsible for the productivity of the UPI, that is NPCI. But NPCI is down the line to RBI. Okay. And under the current scenario, according to each and every financial institute, maximum transactions are happening with respect to the UPI. Currently, it is between around 50 billion, 15 per month. And in upcoming maximum next 1.5 year, maximum 2 year, RBI target is that every day minimum 1 billion transaction, means currently 15 billion monthly, which means RBI target is in maximum next 1.5 year, maybe 2 year, but I'm sure even less than that time period. RBI able to achieve because the manner in which people are using or adopted the UPI. So 1 billion. And now when 1 billion transaction, and in each and every UPI transaction, there is an exposure of the third-party service provider, which we known as e-wallet. And now each and every bank, like internal auditor is appointed by a particular banking organization. Internal auditor would be appointed by, suppose, any startup. Internal auditor would be appointed by a particular business organization. And now till date, that organization was using a one mode of the payment, like for example, IMPS, RTGS. Now organization adopted the UPI. And again, with respect to the UPI, suppose till yesterday organization maximum using the services of Paytm, but suddenly, like in the history of a startup, now just before couple of years, everybody heard the great story of Paytm, and now everybody is listening the new great story of the Paytm from top to bottom. And now RBI restricted. Now many of the business organization, I hope so, even there are many POS, those which are totally dependent on to Paytm. And now when suddenly RBI raised the red flag against the process model of Paytm, so now many of the business organization, they have to migrate from Paytm to PhonePe, or even to the Google Pay. Okay. So although they are again the third-party service provider, but the process model followed by Paytm is totally different than the process model followed by the PhonePe, or the process model followed by MobiKwik, or the process model followed by the Google Pay or the WhatsApp Pay. And now this again become the challenge for internal auditors. So internal auditor has to regular basis update himself, regular basis has to gain the knowledge, gain the real-time information or updates through the regulator. Okay, on left-hand side, right-hand side, and on the basis of that to review. So if the thinking pattern of this agile auditor is not calm and quiet, so somewhere impact would come over the total productivity, because this is again a one type of a vulnerability. Okay. And now, when organizations are highly dependent onto the technology, now this again become the challenge for the internal auditors, that daily basis how internal auditor, because auditor is not responsible to use the technology directly, but auditor is responsible to review the technology through which organization perform the changes in their business process, because organization concern about the productivity of the business. Okay, means if organization using the term automation, so automation basically whatever the business process they were running manually, now the same business process is now enabled with the technology. Now till yesterday technology number one, and now technology number two. Like if suppose with respect to the banking system, I hope many of you perform the bank audit, and I hope many of you are quite well versed with Finacle, quite well versed with FlexCube, quite well versed with the TCS Bank. And all these are the type of the CBS system. Okay. Now, if we'll consider for time being the Finacle, Finacle is a product which is purely designed, developed by Infosys, and 70% banks within our country dependent on to the Finacle. Okay. But what about here? Infosys is a third party service provider. Okay. And that product used by the bank and internal auditor, those which are working within the bank, okay, they are responsible just to review the business process with respect to a particular banking organization. Now, all these internal auditors, for time being, just assume they educated themselves about the amendments performed by the regulator, that is the RBI. Okay, even the changes with respect to UPI performed by NPCI. Okay, but they don't know anything that how Infosys implemented those changes into the CBS system. And now each and every bank which is using the Finacle, or even the bank which is using the FlexCube, or bank which is using the TCS Bank, okay, their dependency over the CBS system would be maximum. But CBS solution not designed, developed by the banks. So can we say that this is again the responsibility of the Agile auditor, that somewhere Agile auditor has to regular basis communicate, and somewhere Agile auditor has to play the role of a consultant also? Means not only to play the role of auditor, because auditor is only responsible to play the key role at the end of the business cycle, but especially under the Agile auditor, when the changes occur daily basis, so business cycle from the scratch would be created, would be executed, and then would be reviewed. So can we say that Agile auditor is not only playing the role or the key role at the end of the business cycle, but Agile auditor is basically responsible for the entire business cycle, okay, from scratch to end. And now here there is one more challenge, that how to perform the Agile audit, because now there are different sections. Like if suppose we'll consider organization having the data center, organization having multiple business unit, okay, have to perform the internal audit of the data center, have to perform the internal audit of the database server. If organization is fully paperless and fully dependent onto the technology, have to review the network, have to review the hardware infrastructure, have to review the software infrastructure. And again, with respect to the software infrastructure, there are a number of different type of software applications. Some software applications are ERP, some software application used for the purpose of analysis, like along with the Excel. Organizations are extensively using the Power BI, organization extensively using the Python for machine learning. But again, I hope all of you would agree, even the banks are using the Python. Each and every business organization using the Python, they are extensively using for machine learning. They are using the different libraries like the Pandas, Matplotlib, Scikit. Okay, same as with respect to the Power BI, they are using the Power Query. Power Pivot, Power View. Okay. But all the software applications not designed, developed by any business organization. And now this is again the responsibility of the IS, responsibility of the internal auditor and agile auditor to review on regular basis, because under the current scenario, whenever the organization think about the change or to enhance or improve the productivity of the business process, so in a short interval, they are migrating from one version of the software application to the new version of the software application. Okay. Now, business owner, business organization, and subject matter expert like purchase manager, CFO is only concerned about the productivity of the FICO. Okay. Least data analyst concerned about the productivity of SAP HANA. But the least concerned about that how SAP HANA was designed and developed. And if suppose within the SAP HANA, within the SAP FICO, within the Python, within the Power BI, some vulnerability exists. So due to this also, internal business process quality would be suffer. All the organization concerned about. So here, again, the key role or the major role of the internal auditor. So now internal auditor, not only to educate himself or herself with respect to the regulator, with respect to the business environment, but somewhere, according to me, for the current agile environment, where organization having the huge dependency over the technology, and nobody means nobody can deny, because I mentioned at the beginning somewhere that under the current scenario, data is the lifeline and technology is the driver. And now we are shifting from, even people fail to understood the artificial intelligence, and now organizations are planning to implement generative AI, which is the practical implementation of machine learning and natural language processing. So, although auditor has not to design or develop, but if auditor is not well acquainted what is new inside the technology, and whether that new thing inside the new version of the technology means what is the difference between artificial intelligence and generative AI, what is the difference between artificial intelligence and machine learning, what is the difference between database server and data warehousing, what is the difference between data warehousing and data lake, and if internal auditor especially, who is playing the key role, which having the maximum exposure on regular basis in place of external auditor, because external auditor having the limited exposure, but internal auditor, which is a one type of a now agile auditor on regular basis, having the exposure, if he or she is not thoroughly educated with all this fundamentals, not to become the expert, but what is inside. So somewhere can we say that from the auditor point of view, this would be a one type of a vulnerability. And now, if auditor is not thoroughly trained about this new way of doing the business, so can we say that this going to be the threat for the business organization, and this create opportunity for more and more fraudster and hacker? And that's why the percentage of cyber attack, that's why the percentage of cyber threat, and that's why the percentage of forensic audit is suddenly shoot up, which become the one of the most emerging and revenue generation model for many of the auditors also. So this is my again humble request, especially if you really want to expertise, please continuous process of learning, and along with the learning, your level of understanding, along with the understanding, your level of reasoning. Okay, means learning, and during the learning, always focus onto the application or utility, because from the professional user point of view, according to me, you and me, whenever we learn something new, so until unless we don't know the application or utility, then there is no mean. And again, from the, if I use the term professional, then I'm very much concerned about how that would helpful to us in boost up the revenue generation also. in boost up the revenue generation also. So on regular basis means regular basis, 24 by 7, 365 days. Because agile means a dynamic. When you and me, we are taking the rest, that doesn't mean organizations. Because under the current scenario, each and every business organization, they are working under the heterogeneous environment. And now they are working under the hybrid. And now in next 2 years, if my analysis would be correct, 90 to 95% organization, not globally, even in our country, would be full-fledged online. So 24 by 7, 365 days business cycles would be running. And organization, their dependency over the technology would be maximum. Okay. More and more merger, acquisition, and joint ventures would going to be held in upcoming year. So this is going to become more and more challenge from the agile auditor point of view. And just like the COVID, into the COVID, there is a one particular specialist, Medico, for whom it generated the huge revenue, that is the respiratory expert. Similarly here, now this agile auditor would able to generate the huge revenue if suppose he or she would be thoroughly prepared. Okay. Thank you. Any query from your end, Ms. Bhanu? You free to fire any query? Definitely sometime in future. I'll go with the detail, but I hope I'm able to justify this concept up to some level.
No queries yet, sir.
Yeah. Anybody want to ask any queries? So kindly just.
No, sir. No queries are being raised.
But Ms. Bhanu, I hope so. I'm able to justify the concept.
Yes, it was really a very, very wonderful and informative session, sir. Thank you so much for such an insightful session. Our deepest gratitude goes to you for enlightening us with your commendable talk on the subject.
No.
We are highly indebted, sir.
No. So kind of.
So I also sincerely thank all the participants who were live with us and attended the webinar with lots of enthusiasm and spirit. Thank you so much, everyone.